Did you know the NFL used to be more dangerous than a street fight? We're talking about no helmets, no rules, and players who would literally bite, gouge, and fistfight during games. Some matches didn't end with a score, they ended with ambulances. So how did football transform from near illegal chaos into a $150 billion empire with billion-dollar stadiums and $500 million contracts? Let's rewind to 1892. That year, America straight up jacked rugby from the Brits. England had this wild game using a weird-shaped ball, and the US was like, cool, we'll take it, but make it deadly. They renamed it football, ignored helmets, and added a brutal twist. No pads, no protections, just pain. By 1906, the sport had become a national scandal. Over 100 people had died, and thousands more were disabled from playing. Football was literally killing kids. The public was outraged. Some colleges banned it, and even President Teddy Roosevelt threatened to shut it down if it didn't change. Enter Jim Thorpe, 1920, Olympic gold medalist and American icon. He was the guy who helped form the first pro football league, introduced leather helmets, outlawed brawling, and allowed the forward pass, an actual strategy beyond body slamming each other. They called it the American Professional Football Association. But 2 years later, they gave it a glow up and renamed it the National Football League. The NFL was born. But here's the kicker. Nobody cared. There was no TV, no national schedule. And the teams, would you cheer for the Columbus Panhandles or the Mullen Universal Tractors? These guys weren't athletes. They were milkmen and coal miners who played football on weekends. It wasn't a full-time job. The league had zero structure. Teams played whenever they felt like it. Jerseys looked like thrift store leftovers. Fans were confused, and worse, college football was way more popular, making the NFL look like a joke. And the financials? Brutal. 14 teams went bankrupt. Players were unpaid or underpaid. Many teams couldn't even afford to travel. For 2 decades, the NFL was a financial failure on the edge of collapse. But that was all about to change, because one decision would soon turn the NFL from a sideshow into a money machine. By the 1940s, the NFL was flatlining. Fans weren't showing up, teams were going broke, and college football was still king. It was looking like the league might fold entirely until it made 3 game-changing business decisions that saved it from extinction. Before the 1940s, NFL games were like jazz improvised. Teams picked when and who to play, making it impossible for fans to follow. Imagine being a Browns fan and not knowing when your team played or if they played that week. So the NFL finally got organized. A structured seasonal schedule was introduced. Weekly matchups, home and away planning, and standings that mattered gave fans something to rally around and build loyalty. You knew when your team played. You had something to look forward to every Sunday. In 1949, the NFL took its boldest business leap yet. They put the game on TV. At the time, television was still new, but NFL execs saw the writing on the wall. If football could get inside people's homes, it could grow beyond stadium walls. That decision was monumental. Within a decade, the NFL inked its first major broadcast deal, and things exploded. Games were now national events, not just local shows. Advertisers wanted in. Ratings climbed. Fans could finally watch from their couch. And it all built up to one defining moment. The 1958 NFL Championship. Colts versus Giants. The stakes were high. The game went into the first ever sudden death overtime, and over 45 million people tuned in. That's 9x the viewership of the year before. It wasn't just a game, it was a TV spectacle, and it became known forever as the greatest game ever played. That single game made football feel important, like a national tradition. And just like that, the NFL went from background noise to primetime television gold. The last piece of the puzzle, safety innovation. Players were getting concussed left and right, and many feared the league couldn't survive if more players kept dying or ending up disabled. So in 1949, the NFL started rolling out plastic helmets, a huge upgrade from leather caps. They were stronger, more protective, and more TV-friendly. Logos, team colors, branding, you name it. It was the start of the NFL's transformation from violent pastime to a polished product. Safety wasn't just about player health, it was about protecting the league's future. Investors took it more seriously. Advertisers liked what they saw, and kids across the country started dreaming of going pro. With structure, safety, and screen time, the NFL was no longer a mess of coal miners and chaos. It was starting to look like a real business. But the league's first true explosion? That wouldn't happen until the 1960s, when the NFL found itself in an all-out war with a richer, flashier rival and almost lost everything. By the early 1960s, the NFL was finally stable, games were scheduled, fans were tuning in, ratings were climbing. But just when the league started smelling success, the door got kicked in. Enter the AFL, the American Football League, a flashy new rival backed by a group of mega-rich, business-savvy owners who had one goal: take down the NFL by any means necessary. And their first move? Steal the players. AFL teams were offering insane salaries, raiding college rosters, and poaching NFL stars like it was a heist movie. One owner paid the NFL's Rookie of the Year double his contract just to jump ship. The NFL couldn't keep up. Their salaries looked like pocket change in comparison. Suddenly, every draft pick became a bidding war. Players were getting rich, but teams were bleeding cash. But it wasn't just the athletes they were after. The AFL also went for the NFL's TV contracts, signing a deal with ABC that gave their games nationwide exposure. For the first time, there were two pro football leagues on primetime television. Fans were choosing sides. Advertisers were too. The war got so wild, teams were spying on each other, leaking playbooks, and even buying each other's staff members. It was chaos. But here's the twist. Neither side was actually winning. Both leagues were burning money faster than they could print it. The NFL had prestige. The AFL had deep pockets. But year after year, no one was coming out on top. Until finally, in 1966, they both looked at the scoreboard and saw the same thing. Bankruptcy was coming for them both. The 1970s gave birth to everything we love and argue about in football today. Game-changing plays, superstar dynasties, bitter rivalries, and most importantly, unstoppable momentum. And it all kicked off with one of the most controversial moments in NFL history. So they made a call that changed sports forever: the merger. The two leagues agreed to unite under one brand, the NFL. They kept all the teams, split them into two conferences, AFC and NFC, and agreed to hold a grand finale championship game every year. They didn't know what to call it at first, until one owner joked about his kid's toy, something called a Super Bowl. And just like that, the Super Bowl was born. From that moment on, football was no longer just a sport. It was a national event. It was TV dominance. It was money. In the first Super Bowl, ad space cost $42,000. Today, try $7 million per spot. That merger didn't just save football, it created a platform for the NFL to become the most profitable sports league on earth. But the league's rise didn't stop there, because in the 1970s, the NFL entered its first golden era when legends were made, dynasties were born, and a controversial play would change everything. It's 1972, AFC playoff game. Steelers versus Raiders. Final seconds. Terry Bradshaw launches a pass. The ball ricochets off a helmet, bounces mid-air, and just before it hits the ground, Franco Harris snatches it, running it into the end zone for the game-winning touchdown. The crowd loses their minds, but the Raiders are pissed. Back then, there was a rule. If an offensive player touches the ball, another offensive player can't catch it unless a defender touches it in between. Replays were grainy. Nobody could tell who the ball actually hit. The refs huddled, then made a phone call. 10 minutes later, touchdown confirmed. Steelers win. Raiders cry foul. To this day, people call it the Immaculate Reception. Raiders fans, they call it the Immaculate Deception. But the impact was bigger than just a bad call. It was the moment the Steelers dynasty was born. By the end of the 70s, the NFL had become a television powerhouse. Regular season games were pulling 30+ million viewers. Super Bowl ads were selling out months in advance. Teams started striking local sponsorship deals, and merchandise revenue tripled. It wasn't just about tickets anymore. It was TV rights, branding, and market expansion. The NFL had become a cultural engine, and fans weren't just buying tickets, they were buying identities. But behind the glory was growing pressure. The league was bigger than ever. The money was pouring in, and a single plane crash would shake the NFL and its safety protocols to the core. By the 1980s, the NFL was flying high. Record ratings, massive merch sales, and new dynasties dominating the field. But just when things were peaking, the league was forced to face its darkest fear: death, not on the field, but in the air. Between 1970 and 1980, 3 separate plane crashes involving sports teams shocked the world. The Marshall University football team, the University of Evansville basketball team, and the US boxing team. All 3 crashes were fatal. In total, 901 people lost their lives. From 1974 to 1979, the Pittsburgh Steelers became the team, 4 Super Bowl wins, 9 Hall of Famers, names like Bradshaw, Harris, Mean Joe Green, guys that defined what dominance looked like. The Dallas Cowboys weren't far behind, 2 Super Bowl wins, massive national fan base, branded as America's team, a genius move that boosted their marketing appeal across the country. And then there were the Miami Dolphins, led by Don Shula. They became the only team in NFL history to finish a season undefeated, a perfect record that still hasn't been matched. These dynasties weren't just about wins. They turned players into household names, sold millions in merch, and doubled TV viewership. And fans, they were hooked for life. When one team dominates, it creates love or hate loyalty. It fuels rivalries. It makes every game feel personal. And that emotion, that's exactly what turns sports into business gold. But it was the Marshall crash that hit closest to home. On November 14, 1970, a charter jet carrying the entire team, staff, and boosters slammed into a hillside while trying to land. All 75 people on board were killed. It was the worst tragedy in US sports history. The NFL wasn't directly involved, but they knew something had to change, because if this happened to one of their teams, the consequences would be catastrophic. So they created something no other league had, the disaster draft. It sounds brutal, and it kind of is. If an NFL team were to suffer a mass casualty event like a crash, terror attack, or natural disaster, the league would activate a disaster protocol. Surviving teams would contribute players through a special emergency draft to help the affected team rebuild. It's one of the NFL's most secretive policies, rarely discussed publicly, but it exists, because the league knows that tragedy is always a possibility, and when your product is worth billions, you plan for everything. By the mid-1980s, the NFL had the structure, it had the safety protocols, it had the national TV audience. Now it just needed superstars, heroes fans could idolize and brands could cash in on, and no one fit the bill better than Jerry Rice and Joe Montana. The NFL also realized that if it wanted to protect its money, it had to protect its players, not just from tragedy, but from everyday hits. So throughout the 80s, the league introduced stricter rules on contact, especially targeting the head, neck, and spine. Helmet-to-helmet hits became penalties. Face mask grabs? Illegal. Late hits? Fined. These weren't just about morality, they were business moves. Injuries meant lawsuits. Concussions meant bad press. And stars on the bench meant lost ticket sales. Safety became a brand, and the NFL leaned in. New helmets were engineered, medical staff expanded, sideline concussion protocols were introduced. Every step was designed to minimize risk and maximize revenue. These changes didn't just save lives, they saved the league, because in the next decade, a new generation of superstars was about to hit the field, and the NFL needed them healthy, marketable, and playing in prime time. In 1985, the San Francisco 49ers drafted Jerry Rice, now considered the greatest wide receiver in NFL history. Most touchdowns, most receiving yards, most unstoppable routes. He was a highlight machine. But what made Rice and the 49ers so powerful wasn't just his talent, it was his pairing with Joe Montana, the coolest, calmest quarterback the league had ever seen. Together, they didn't just win, they dominated. 2 Super Bowls in 4 years. Undefeated playoff runs. Every game felt like an event. And that's exactly what the NFL wanted. With superstardom came massive paydays. Players started signing multi-million-dollar deals, not just with teams, but with companies. Nike, Gatorade, Pepsi, Wheaties, everyone wanted a piece of the NFL's faces. TV networks knew it too. CBS, NBC, and later Fox started bidding wars for broadcasting rights, raising the value of NFL TV deals into the hundreds of millions. By the end of the 80s, NFL revenue had crossed $1 billion annually. And the Super Bowl, it wasn't just a game, it was the biggest TV broadcast of the year, every year. But the 1990s would flip the script, because while the NFL had created icons, it also created monsters, scandals, crime, chaos, and one player would drive the entire country into a media frenzy unlike anything sports had ever seen. The league began shifting from teams versus teams to faces versus faces. Networks pushed slow-mo replays of Rice's routes, Montana commercials aired during halftime, kids wanted their jerseys, adults bought posters, and everyone tuned in. The NFL realized something crucial. You don't just sell the game, you sell the people who play it. so they leaned into it. Players started appearing on magazine covers and trading cards. NFL Films created cinematic highlight reels, and Super Bowl MVPs became national celebrities overnight. This player-focused branding brought in new fans, especially women and younger viewers. It also opened the door for more merchandising than ever before. We're talking jerseys, hats, video games, action figures, and branded cereal boxes. Yes, that happened. The NFL was no longer just a league. It was a marketing juggernaut. The 1990s started with the NFL at its peak, ratings booming, stars on cereal boxes, and fans loyal for life. But what happened next shattered that image, because one of the league's biggest legends became the center of the most watched, most shocking scandal in sports history. The O.J. trial didn't just spotlight one man, it opened the floodgates. Suddenly, people were asking, how many NFL players have been arrested? How much violence is happening off the field? Turns out, a lot. In the years following the trial, Ray Caruth hired a hitman to murder his pregnant girlfriend. Alonzo Spellman had a public mental breakdown and threatened suicide. Cecil Collins broke into a woman's apartment just to watch her sleep. The league's heroes were starting to look like villains. The media pounced. Late-night shows mocked. Parents got nervous. Sponsors asked questions. And for the first time, the NFL had a real PR crisis on its hands. He wasn't just a running back. He was the running back. Heisman Trophy winner, NFL MVP, 2,000-yard season. After retiring, O.J. didn't fade. He became a celebrity. Commercials, movies, broadcasting gigs. The guy was everywhere. But in 1994, everything changed. On June 12th, O.J.'s ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend Ron Goldman were found brutally murdered. Days later, O.J. was charged with the murders, and instead of turning himself in, he did the unthinkable. He ran. News helicopters followed his white Bronco across LA highways as over 95 million people watched live. It was surreal, a football icon in a low-speed police chase. O.J. eventually surrendered, but the damage was done. The trial turned into a national obsession, and when the glove didn't fit and the jury said not guilty, half the country cheered, the other half screamed. O.J. walked free, but the NFL, it was left picking up the pieces. The scandals of the 90s rattled the NFL's image, but instead of shrinking, the league doubled down on what it did best, making money. Welcome to the 2000s, when cash became the real MVP. To save face, the NFL started enforcing new player conduct rules. They ramped up background checks, suspended players for criminal charges, and created an entire personal conduct policy, something that had never existed before. Behind the scenes, teams began investing in player image consulting, crisis management firms, and legal staff. The message was clear. If the NFL was going to keep the money flowing, it had to protect its brand, even from its own players. The 1990s exposed the league's darkest side, but the 2000s, that's when the money hit hyperdrive, and players weren't just stars anymore. They became millionaire celebrities with global influence. By the early 2000s, the NFL was no longer just a game. It was a machine, powered by TV contracts, ad revenue, merchandising, and brand licensing. League revenue crossed $6 billion, and that money flowed straight to the stars. Brett Favre signed for $47 million. Randy Moss locked in $66 million. Even safeties like Lawyer Malloy pulled $35 million over 7 years. But then came Drew Bledsoe. In 2001, he signed the largest contract in NFL history at the time, $103 million over 10 years. He was the franchise quarterback, the face of the Patriots, and then he got hurt. A collapsed lung, out for the season. The Patriots were forced to play his backup, some no-name 6th-round pick who ran a slow 40 and looked like he sold printer ink at Office Depot. His name, Tom Brady. And by the end of the season, Brady didn't just take Bledsoe's spot, he won the Patriots a Super Bowl. That single injury changed everything, not just for the Patriots, but for the NFL's future as a celebrity-driven, dynastic league. Behind the scenes, the NFL was negotiating massive broadcast deals. Fox, CBS, and ESPN were locked in bidding wars. Monday Night Football became appointment viewing, and Super Bowl ad prices skyrocketed to over $2 million per 30 seconds. Then came the merch. NFL Shop exploded. Nike landed exclusive jersey rights, and stadiums were renamed for brands Gillette, MetLife, FedEx. The league was everywhere. TV, video games, cereal boxes, even Visa commercials. Every piece of the NFL became a revenue stream, And as the money grew, so did the expectations. NFL stars started to function like brands. Agents negotiated endorsement clauses, image rights, and social media deals. Suddenly, being a quarterback wasn't just about throwing touchdowns, it was about marketability. If you could sell tickets, sell jerseys, and pull ratings, you could make 9 figures on and off the field. This set the tone for a new NFL, one where teams weren't just competing for wins, they were competing for attention. But while the league was printing money, something darker was bubbling beneath the surface. Because the next scandal wouldn't be about crime, it would be about cheating. And the team behind it, the same one led by that 6th-round backup named Tom Brady. The 2000s had a new villain, and their name was the New England Patriots. Led by Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, the Pats became the NFL's most dominant force and its most controversial. They didn't just win, they crushed opponents. And soon people started asking, are they just good or are they cheating? Turns out it was both. It's 2007, Week 1. Patriots versus Jets. The Jets start noticing something weird. The Patriots' defense seems to know every play before it happens. The NFL launches an investigation. What they uncover: the Patriots had been secretly videotaping opposing team signals, violating NFL rules for at least 8 seasons. It became known as Spygate. The fallout was massive. The NFL fined Belichick $500,000, the largest fine ever for a coach. The team lost a first-round draft pick and got hit with another $250,000 penalty. The league tried to move on, but the cheater label stuck. And from that point on, every Patriots win came with an asterisk. But then came Deflategate, AFC Championship, Patriots versus Colts. The Colts notice something strange. The footballs feel off. They tell the refs. The NFL investigates. Result: 11 out of 12 Patriots footballs were underinflated. Less air means easier grip, tighter spirals, better control, especially in cold weather. The blame landed squarely on Tom Brady. Text messages, destroyed cell phones, locker room whispers. The NFL suspended him 4 games, fined the team $1 million, and stripped them of 2 draft picks. But here's the twist. Spygate and Deflategate became media gold. TV ratings went up. Pats games became must-watch events. People tuned in just to see them lose. The Patriots became the NFL's perfect villain. Dominant, polarizing, and always in the spotlight. And that spotlight, it printed money. During their run, the Patriots went to 9 Super Bowls. Brady became the most marketable player in football. Foxborough turned into a merchandising empire. The NFL's broadcast deals reached new record highs. Every scandal just added fuel to the fire. The Patriots showed the NFL something important. Controversy sells. Haters tune in just as much as fans, maybe even more. And as the league prepared for a new generation of talent, one thing was clear: drama drives revenue. The NFL has always been ahead of the curve when it comes to business. But now it's not just about bigger stadiums, better athletes, or more viewers. It's about data, AI, surveillance, and a future where the game might know the play before the players do. The NFL is working with tech partners to build real-time AI systems that analyze team tendencies mid-game. These tools are trained on millions of snaps, identifying patterns invisible to the human eye. They can track player movements down to the inch, recognize formations before they fully develop, predict play calls with up to 80% accuracy, and even recommend defensive counters on the fly. And for fans, this tech shows up as next-gen stat overlays during broadcasts, projecting routes, pass likelihood, and expected gains before the ball is snapped. It's like Madden, but real and monetized. Every player now wears sensors. Tiny chips track everything: speed, acceleration, heart rate, collision impact, and recovery time. That raw data, it's sold to coaches building game plans, betting companies pricing odds, advertisers targeting fan segments, and even wearable fitness brands looking to partner with the league. Yes, the NFL is selling your favorite player stats to the highest bidder. This data is also used to create personalized experiences for fans. Want to follow only WRs? Done. Want to hear just QBs mic'd up in game? Click a button. Every play, every camera, every audio stream, customized, and all of it locked behind new premium subscription tiers.